This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Have a real formal agenda with me. Oh, okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Clerk will note that the members present and we're lack of a quorum, but these are all informational items today. So in my opinion, they're missing out on an opportunity to learn. So we don't guess we have to approve the agenda. We have a quorum. So we're going to start with New Gen Strategies. And they've been working diligently on a plan, as I understand it, dealing with our landfill. And they're on the phone. There he is.
Hey, Dave, can you hear us?
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, let us adjust our volume. Okay, proceed, sir. Welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. For the record, my name is Dave Yankee. I'm the president of New Gen Strategies and Solutions. And let's see, we can go to the next slide, please.
Okay, now go ahead.
They're working on it.
Sorry.
There you go. No worries, no problem. Thank you very much. Just real quick to give you a little background on our firm, we're a 50-person management consulting firm. We focus on working with municipal utilities for water, wastewater, solid waste, and electric issues. We are strictly cost of service, feasibility studies. We are not an engineering firm. I'm out of our Austin, Texas office. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little background, who's this person that's been working on this study with you? I have right at 30 years of experience in conducting solid waste, water, wastewater, cost of service, and rate design studies. We do actually quite a bit of work in New Mexico. Some of our other clients, Hobbs, New Mexico has been a longtime client of mine, Farmington, and we work with a number of the solid waste authorities as well, including South Central Solid Waste Authority, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, just as a little background. And again, I focus on cost of service studies. That's my bread and butter. Next slide, please. So we were hired to conduct a cost of service study for your solid waste utility. And so there are 5 basic steps we go through. We develop a test year, which I'll explain in just a minute. It's basically our starting point, and we use the city's budget for the solid waste utility as the starting point. And then we develop a revenue requirement forecast. In this case, we're doing a 5-year forecast. And again, I'll define revenue requirement in just a second. And then once we've developed a 5-year forecast, again, built off the city's budget, we allocate those costs to the different service categories. Those are the services you provide, whether it's the residential garbage collection, it's the bulky garbage collection, operating the landfill, collecting roll-off, your roll-off container line of business. We come up with the exact cost for all of those services. And then we determine the billing units, number of households, dumpsters being picked up, etc. And then we calculate the cost of service. Next slide, please. So a couple items. We started this study a while back, so we actually used the fiscal year test year. Our starting point test year is the fiscal year 2021 solid waste budget. Couple notable items that we forecasted based on a review of your capital improvement plan, based on extensive conversations with your staff, and also our experience based on useful life of equipment, et cetera. Here are some of the major items that were budgeted for in our forecast. Vehicle replacement, which are your collection vehicles, capital infrastructure at the landfill, capital equipment replacement at the landfill. That's compactors, things like that. And then what's very important to put in is closure, post-closure funding, setting aside money so that when the landfill does close, you have the money set aside for closure and then the monitoring, which is post-closure. And then also setting money aside in a cell construction fund so that you can put money towards the next cell construction when you have that. And then finally, there's a bond issue that started in fiscal year 2022 related to cell, I believe it was cell 5A. And then finally, the transfer to the general fund. Next slide, please. So what's the revenue requirement? Bottom line, the revenue requirement are all of the costs that are incurred by the city to operate a solid waste utility, keep its equipment running, replacing equipment on a useful life basis. So it's your operating and maintenance costs, your vehicle replacement costs, your capital improvement projects, again, primarily at the landfill. Those costs all add up to the revenue requirement, and that's what we developed for you for this 5-year forecast. Next slide, please. So you also were provided a memo that has a series of tables in it and then schedules. So there are a lot of numbers there. I'm glad to discuss that with you if you would like, but I'm just going to hit at a high level the numbers and what we're recommending as far as rate increases. So based on our analysis, the total cost for operating your utility, your solid waste utility, is right around just under $9 million. In fiscal year 2023, which you've just entered into, you're at about $9.2 million. It grows to about $9.5 million in 2024, up to just under 10 million in fiscal year 2026. And again, I want to emphasize this includes all of those costs I was discussing on the prior slide. So you're funding and replacing equipment, maintaining the landfill, all of those items. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing and recommending for residential rates are your current rates are at $17.75 per month per household. And what we're recommending is that they be increased to $22.50 effective January 1, 2023, so in about 3 months. And then again at the start of fiscal year 2025, which would be July 1, 2024, an additional increase of $1.50 per month per household. Next slide, please. With regard to roll-off rates and landfill disposal fees, with regard to the pull rates, right now you're charging $231.50. We're recommending that be increased to $245 again at January 1st, 2023, and then each year it go up by $10 at the start of each fiscal year to $255 and then $265, $275. You are under the market compared with other, the private haulers, so you're in good shape to be able to propose this rate increase. And then finally, we're recommending that your landfill tipping fees be increased. Right now, they're currently at $42.25 a ton, and we're recommending the gate rate be increased to $45 and then to $47.25 and then to $50 and $52.50. The contractual rates, we would recommend those be increased also, but at a higher rate. Again, you've got this landfill. It is expensive to maintain these landfills. It's important that you're able to recover all the revenues required to cover your operating expenses and your capital equipment. and the construction and maintenance of it. So we would recommend these rate increases. And they're not out of, when compared with others, they're not unreasonable or out of, whack or whatever term you want to use. Next slide, please. So bottom line, if those rate recommendations are implemented, what happens is, again, and a lot of numbers here, I'll just hit the highlights. That top line, the revenue requirement, those are the costs. Remember, I was talking about to operate your utility. So in fiscal year 2023, it's right at about $9.2 million to operate the utility. Again, by fiscal year 2026, it's $9,952,000. If you implement the proposed rate increases, you can see the second line, that number gradually goes up. It's at about 7.2 million in fiscal year 2022, would go to about 8.1 million, and eventually to 10,369,000 in year 5. What that allows you to do is no longer under recover your operating costs. Right now, at this current spend rate, you would have to dip into reserves or postpone future equipment purchases and things like that. And again, with aging trucks, it's critical that these rate increases be put in effect so you can purchase and stay current with replacing your equipment, both the collection and for the landfill operations. If you do that, the under recovery line, that's the third line. Bottom line, by fiscal year 2025, the solid waste utility is totally break even. It's covering all of its costs, and then the utility's in great shape. Next slide, please. That's the summary of everything I have. I know it's a lot of information. I'm glad to take any questions you have.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just wanted to make sure for the record, I joined in. I did not want to just to speak out in the middle of the presentation. I joined in at 4:09, had some difficulty getting online, but I joined at 4:09. I've been listening. Thank you. I'll listen.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining. So where did you come in, Councilman Terry?
4:09.
Well, where were we in the presentation?
Oh, he was just starting the process of explaining where we are with fees and the potential, according to my notes, of moving up those fees from $17.75 to $22.50, and then moving to the roll-offs and those kind of things as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, let me see. We've got a couple of questions from someone online. You mind if I ask first?
Go ahead, sure.
Okay, so I guess how much money we have invested in this plan?
Oh, Dave, one of the residents is asking about the cost of this study. Can you speak to that? Since it's water, wastewater, and solid waste, you focused only on solid waste?
Correct. We have focused just on the solid waste and have completed that analysis, as we are still waiting on some of the information for the water cost of service. So the total budget for this project, and let me go back, get the number, and it's broken out. I apologize. Let me just get it. It was right at, hold on. It was right at $100,000.
Oh, okay. Then when you come on with the wastewater, that's an additional charge. And because you guys just bill by the work you perform, we don't have a contract set amount kind of thing. Is that
Well,
my understanding?
no,
Is my
that-
understanding correct?
Lon, do you want to take that or go ahead?
Yeah, no, Counselor, we did go out to RFP and we do have a contract in place.
Okay, all right.
Right now, because of the information and the data that was provided, they went ahead and completed the solid waste. After this is completed, then we'll go back to the water, wastewater.
Okay, well, that's important. That's high on my list of inquiries. We got to keep that plant going. We got to keep everything going. But I know if wastewater goes down, then people are going to get a discharge back into the bathtub. So we don't want that to happen. And the other question I think that was asked was who asked for the study? Pretty good.
Yeah. So this was something that we talked about internally with administration and with staff because it's been a long time. I don't believe there's been a rate study. So one of the things that we looked at is we'll update the rates. And also when we apply for Water Trust Board money and the funding agencies, they will ask, when was the last time you did a study? And have you adjusted your rates? So this was part of all that effort of making sure that our rates are able to be at the rate they need to be to pay for all of the needs for the enterprise funds.
Right. So we as City Halls.
That's right.
It didn't come from the council.
No, it was something that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add, it was not a full council decision or anything, but there was definitely the discussions going on this has been a long time and it was necessary to move forward and get something going because, as he said, especially during these times when we were having the COVID situations, and you're looking for more grants and you're looking for these kind of things to move forward with, that those things became more evident from, at least when I was having discussions with staff, that this was something that we needed to be looking at. We had a number of years ago done the study with the regular water, and it's behind time of getting to where we are now.
Okay. Well,
Just for the record,
Councilor Hildebrand.
we did increase rates in August of 20 with the resolution that was passed. So that would have been the last time 2 years ago we did increase rates. Resolution 20-48.
Yes, and then we do the CPI in December or in January 1. And so we did one in December of 2021 of 1.6%.
So, but this rate increase in 2 years ago, is it it's a special rate increase? What was it?
And what resolution is that?
It's August 30th, 2020, resolution 20-48, in which fees and charges were established. And that's where it was collection and disposal, single family residence was $210.65 and disposal was $710, which gets you to the $1775 that we're currently at.
I can have to pay for the landfill.
I don't know what it was for. You didn't have a rating. It doesn't say what the old rates were in this resolution, but it does say.
Abraham, can you speak to that? I believe we took out, one of the things that we did not too long ago, we took out the rates from all of the enterprise funds that were in the code. We moved it into a resolution form.
Is that what this is?
And I think Abraham was in that.
2058, we introduced that to put it into an ordinance form.
So it wasn't a rate increase, it was just moving it?
The way it reads, it inadvertently caused that. Or it created a rate increase.
Right. And the annual.
And then we had a CPI rate
That's right.
increase as well. So we had 2 rate increases in 2020. My question.
The CPI we institute the CPI on our end. I don't know if that resolution was.
This resolution doesn't say what it's for. He just says, here's the fees will be established as presented in Exhibit A.
What I recall, Councilor, Mr. Chair, Councilor, so we took the fees that were in the code and we moved it into a resolution form, make it easier to adjust if needed. They included an annual adjustment in that form, but the fees at that time, it was just simply moving from the code to the resolution. There wasn't a formal study or formal to increase those rates. It was just by annual CPI adjustment. Because at the same time, during this period is when this study was being kind of working on in the works.
Fortunately, this resolution is weak in its wording. It doesn't tell the real story of what you're saying.
Yeah, I understand.
Just read it as you go. Well, here's what you were charging. So, Mr. Attorney, I hope that we don't write resolutions like this in the future.
Understood.
We can look into that rate, resolution and see, get a bit more detail with the attorney.
So are those, I'm back to the question.
Right, that's in 13.
I've got it here somewhere, yes.
That's the current. This tells me that we're still operating with these rates. Because he's saying in this study, it's 1775. Is that not what he's saying in here? Yeah, current rate for 22 was, so now we're at 2250. Is that what we're at? What are we at?
17.
We're still at 1775, which is the 20 rate. I'm confused because this is not clear.
Dave, did you hear the question? I think the current rate that you mentioned in your study, can you speak to that again? And maybe we can go, let me know which slide I need to go back to.
Sure.
Because what I'm seeing here, it says proposed monthly residential rates. It says proposed. Year one is fiscal year 2022, which is saying is 1775. And then year two, which is 2023, is saying it's 2250. But that says, it says proposed. So we're still operating, according to what I'm reading, off of 20 rates. So we didn't get a rate increase in 21. We didn't get a rate increase on 22 on CPI.
Which was, when was the last CPI increase?
Because I thought those were annual.
I believe
No.
December of 2021, but I don't know that.
Who's not doing the job, man?
The current rate is at the 1775. And so
Right. Which, Dave, I get you, but I have a
Yeah.
resolution in my hand dated dated August 13th of 2020 that establishes that rate.
Yep.
And I'm hearing we're supposed to have an automatic CPI rate increase in 21 and 22. And we should have, I don't know what it's supposed to be for 23, but we're still operating at the 19 or the 2020 rate.
Yep. You're correct.
And CPI for this year, which is already in the 23 budget, is 9%.
I don't know. I'm reading this and I'm like going, I don't understand.
Well, I got it. You're asking one of my questions. I'll go for it.
And I guess to that point, Dave, this negative number would not be as much as it was, and your proposed rate increases may be higher. Had we been operating at where we should be operating.
I can't speak to what was implemented. These are the current rates we have. It does appear that those rate increases were not.
Yeah. I'm not challenging you.
Sure.
I'm challenging is why we're saying we got CPI rate increases, but we're still operating at 2020.
Yep.
No, it is. Because that's what I'm hearing.
Well,
And
okay.
now he's got shortfalls over there, and it's not his fault. But he's have to suffer because his revenue isn't where it should be.
The resolution, just found it.
So
And I know this is not a decision making, but this is really irritating. So, city manager.
he's in his office.
And he's responsible for this.
Well, he's not, who is?
He is responsible.
I'm next.
With somebody down the.
It's not the manager of the solid waste. Not his problem, but it becomes a problem. You see where I'm talking?
Well,
Because his budget gets affected by it.
so what you said, Jamie, was that rate increases typically happen in December.
Jan,
Well, the resolution, Abraham just pulled up a copy of the resolution. It says July 1st, correct, is when that's what the resolution says.
It's under D. Is all solid waste disposal fees shall be automatically adjusted at the beginning of each fiscal year, beginning July 1, 2021.
Well, that's when the fiscal year starts, so that makes sense.
So we do CPI adjustments on our landfill fees.
yes.
So we change all of our boards to the landfill side. Looking at what you just showed.
And the sheet that out there
Stuff on
for
20.
water says it's January 1 through December 31st
Well,
is the CPI increase. So I don't know.
I mean, his calculations are based on what he presented.
Which is 20.
Well, and also if you look at year 23, fiscal year 23, he says should be implemented January 1st, which is halfway through the fiscal year.
Right, when the CPI should
But
have
it
kicked
should
in.
have happened in July.
Yeah. Councilor Perry, you want to chime in and give us some history here?
I'm trying to listen and trying to understand. I'm hearing the resolution. I do remember us passing through the resolution, trying to pull stuff that we had from code to resolution to allow for, just as was said, the CPI. I cannot answer as to why that was never implemented, and I'm interested in finding out why as well.
Okay. Well, obviously, Councilor, we'll have to do some, Mr. Chair, Councilor, we have to do some research on that question. So we'll certainly have to get back to you all on that.
Because this study made, the numbers should have changed.
Well, obviously, we're out of skew here. And what we suspect is July 1st, 21, there was not a rate increase.
Correct.
July 1st, 22.
Not a rate
Not a
increase.
rate increase.
In July of 23, there wasn't a rate increase.
Well, we're not
Oh, well,
quite there
we
yet.
don't know what that should be though, because we're behind.
Well, yeah. So what you're saying is, if you go back to this resolution that was done a while back,
August of 20.
the ratepayers are subject to a double whammy, right?
Yeah. But we didn't get 21 in, we didn't get 22 in.
Yeah, you're right. 23 won't happen until a year from now, minus 90 days or
Right.
whatever, 30 days, I guess.
And this picture wouldn't be maybe as bleak as it'll be a little less bleak.
Well, we'd be, obviously, if you raise the rates, then the overall fiscal picture is going to improve.
Right.
Okay. Somebody dropped the ball.
That also means that the equipment in our landfill is the trucks. Such repair, I mean, it would probably cost 2 or 3 trucks a year. 2 trucks anyway, probably a year that we could have had newer equipment. I mean, the backloaders, you got 3 of them, one of them works. One of them works sometimes and the other one's for parts. And it's the same place where we ended up with our grapple trucks and had 7 of them. We rolled one, so now we got a new one, so that's the only new one we had. We moved 5 there. Oh, good. I mean, everybody transferred all the money out for solid waste. Well, maybe in one respect, if they paid a raise and more money, they probably would already transferred it out somewhere else.
Well, and Mr. Chair and Mayor, I think one of the things that we're going to be covering today is that question on the transfers, because I think there's been some misinformation about the amount that's been transferred out. And I think that's one of the things that we want to share with you all. on that. And I will also add that in the last couple of years, we've actually purchased quite a bit of equipment at the landfill. You mentioned the scraper, and also the compactor, which was close to $1 million, 1.3 million.
Put it on a note.
That wasn't a note. And, but we did actually, the landfill paid for it upfront, and then we ended up reimbursing the landfill, which tied it also with the cell, the loan for the cell. Prior to that, we purchased almost an $800,000 chipper. And prior to that was another large piece of equipment as well as some trucks. So there's been quite a bit of investment being made at the landfill every year. And as I believe there's some equipment that's needed as well.
Now, you mentioned chipper. That's a device that takes the construction lumber and makes it into mulch. Is that it?
It's the trees, branches, and small woods for the stumps that we bring in. In 2020, we did also purchase the 2 side loaders. 2020. That's to the tune of about 800,000. In 2020.
I got it.
Not that it changes anything, but I would like to know what the rate would have been for 21 and the rate would have been for 22 and what our loss rate is. It doesn't change anything, but it's probably just going to irritate me more.
We need to know.
Well,
Somebody needs to be held responsible for this.
and we've got some, I don't know how, for instance, the county waste, if it's a set contract or if it's part of the rate structure, we charge them by a ton. So our contractors.
If you notice, some of our franchisees, their rates are a little bit higher. So the most frequent user, the majority of the times. And the county does bring in a significant amount of waste. So if we were to look at that, the rate should be a little bit higher.
Well,
in my opinion.
we need, if we're going to change that dynamic, we need to go talk to the county and tell them it's coming down the road because they're like us. They've already done their budget for the rest of this year. And we go in there and say, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you an extra $1 million, pick a number. They're going to have a fit. And I don't blame them. Okay. All right. I'm sorry to
Sorry to go down this track.
Well, yeah, I mean, we got a guy that's done a real good job with not truthful information.
Right.
And I'm going to apologize to him right now. Dave, you still there?
I'm still here, no problem.
Well, I apologize that we've uncovered a real problem with your estimates because apparently you weren't given, either you weren't given the information, but it certainly wasn't implemented. So that skews the whole picture from my vantage point. Now, I may be wrong, but.
Well, let me just ask a question. If those increases have not taken place, we're still at 1775. The analysis, it doesn't change the analysis. We would still recommend these increases be put into effect.
Well, I would suggest that by 2022, it ought to be about 1850 instead of 1775. If, I don't know, figure out 3%.
It's more like 5.
Okay, well, figure 5. That makes it easy. So we're, of course, it's compounding too, because you missed the first rate increase. You didn't get it on the second, so you didn't get the extra benefit of
Well,
compound.
that's when we're doing more compound where the 23 rate should be right now, assuming because it's a 5 and it's an 8.
Right.
So.
Budget project.
Yeah.
The CPI this year.
5 on 10, it would have been 1865.
Not bad for a sheep burger coming up.
No,
with
for 22. And then you take that times 1.08, which is what the inflation rate was, you'd be at $20.12.
So we're real close to his.
Close without, it's $2.40 difference. from what he's proposing in 23 to where we would have been in 23.
Anyway,
Do you factor in the CPI on that?
5%, I took 5% for 22 and 8% for 23,
It's 9.6 this year.
9.6
this year,
this year. So my number's wrong. I only took it at 8.
Go ahead and go to 10.
So let me clear
you're
this.
gonna be above the 2250.
Makes it a lot easier.
8's easier.
10.
Yeah.
10 is easier.
So, Tom. That would have put it at 1863. And what'd you say, Abraham?
9.6%.
It would have been $20.50. We'd have been $2 shy of where he's is. We'd already been, we'd been close.
Okay. Well, any questions for Dave? Let's let him go.
No, I appreciate the work.
Oh, I think it's very enlightening. I'm glad we've got it. And I'm anxious to see his work on the
So, Mr. Chair,
waste.
Mr. Chairman and councilors, so let me ask you, so on the meeting's just for a presentation, and that's what we wanted to kind of just present. Do we proceed forward, bring it to the regular finance committee agenda for an actual recommendation to the council? Or how do you want to proceed with presenting this information so that, do we proceed forward with recommending the new rates?
Well, that's something we can talk about when we get Dave off the line, because we've already paid him 100,000 and let him go about making a living. That's something we can talk about here in a little bit. Yes, sir, Mayor.
Before we get him offline, I just wondered if anybody looked at what happens if we, on the landfill stuff, if we go to some kind of a recycling program, how much we stop waste coming in here. You ever make any money or break? Is it just all cost?
It's all cost.
All cost if you go to recycling. So that's not factored into any of the city recycling program that we do. I don't know how much that would cost. We need to figure that out. If sometime we start recycling, how much, that cost is going to be, because sooner or later, we're going to have to go to recycling something. I don't know, but that's how much that saves on what you put in the landfill. And I don't know about on a burn, if there's any kind of a burn. They used to have a thing in the forest that they put in to burn tree limbs. And anyway, it created an extremely hot fire and it burned it all to ash. And I don't know if we have anything like that, but.
So we actually got a hold of the state and there's a smoke permit that we're looking into getting some information on. So when we found out with that brush file, some of that brush file's been there for 7 or 8 years. And we grab the wood and actually decomposes. So we're looking for avenues to possibly bring to the council and get your permission to burn it, because we have a dedicated area that we can do that. But we're talking to the state first to see what all that entails before we can come to the management and then committee, see if that's okay. And it would reduce that pile by about 75%.
That's a lot of space in that landfill, so that saves a lot. But
I think we're at 30 cubic tons.
The big pile.
The big pile is 30. We have another one's about 20 cubic tons.
yeah, 50 cubic tons to go. That's a lot of space.
But that's kept separate away from, that's actually not in the cell, that's over in the clean slot. So
Yeah, I understand that, but if it's going to end up in the cell, then you got to count it. So we got to figure. Burning it would be very beneficial, I would think, rather than burying it.
It would give us an advantage with the new stuff coming in. The chipper will be able to keep up with that load now. The load now is so huge. We're looking for other avenues, but ultimately, if we can't get to all that, some of it, put it in stuff.
Well, you had something that.
Yes, and Dave, I don't know if you caught what the mayor was talking about in regards to the cost or the potential of recycling as an additional service. I know you mentioned you work with South Central Solid Waste with Patrick Peck. Do you have any
Yes.
thoughts on the cost of recycling?
Yes. So we have a lot of communities that, of course, offer recycling programs. One of the challenges you would have, though, that makes it, I mean, if you provide that as a service for your citizens, it's going to cost additional money because you're going to have to collect the material and you're going to have to transport it to the nearest MRF, material recovery facility, or you're going to have to do your own baling and sorting. And so that cost, and I'm pro recycling, to be clear, but that cost will more than offset by a significant amount the savings you would get from extending the life of the landfill. So in other words, the recycling, while I'm all for it, it's going to add to your costs. It won't save you money. Does that make sense?
Any idea what percentage that would add?
Pardon me?
You have any idea what percentage that would add?
As far as costs?
Yeah, what it would add, in your other cities, how much has that added to their costs when they started decent recycling program?
Yeah, so for instance, it depends what kind of recycling program you're going to have. Are you going to have 2 or 3 or 4, drop off centers around the city? And if you have those, you typically want those to be manned and in a gated area. If you're going to collect it curbside, say with, in a cart, then that's going to cost more. So I can give you ranges you can drive a truck through, but to give you an idea, if you were to build some drop-off sites, a couple of those, that's going to add probably at least $1, if not more, per month per household. If you're doing a curbside collection program, you're probably talking $4 to $5 for getting the equipment, the labor, and then you're going to have to transport it to a material recovery facility. Please take those numbers. Those are very, very rough numbers, but we do feasibility studies to look at those programs. But you're definitely going to have your rates go up if you offer a recycling program. Hopefully that helped a little bit.
Adds to the thought process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
So any other questions? Dave, well, we got him. Councilor Perry, you have any questions for Dave?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Appreciate your time. Thank you and your information.
Yep. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So anything we need to discuss with these other? Okay, let's
I
go.
want to go through those, but do you have, what order do you want to do this in?
No, you can go ahead. The only thing I was going to cover is about kind of some of our areas of operations.
Because I am really curious about this $1.5 million that got transferred one time or multiple times, and that's what it adds up to. Is that what's in here?
Yes, we're going to talk about
Right.
first.
Randy, yours.
The balance sheet is a single page. It's on front and back. Shows you that as of when I ran this, which would have been the end of August, there was 4.2, almost 4.3 million in pulled cash for water or solid waste and landfill. Got all of their accounts receivable sitting out there. Just a side note, I was gonna let you all know that with the shutoffs and what collection and everything over there, since 9/1 through 9/11, they collected $812,043.88. So,
Pretty effective collector, Jane.
yeah, in 11 days, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So we've got all the fixed assets on there, goes down, the deferred outflows for pension and personnel. The liabilities are on there. The total fund balance is 7,726,690, 275, and it balances, so that's a good sign.
Like that.
That was for you.
Oh, it's few counts. I mean, you know.
Yeah, she got it. I got it.
Can you put that in their minutes that the CDO group agreed?
The income statement, what I've done is, it's 9 pages, it's also front and back. I've given you FY21 actuals, FY22 actuals, August through August for 23, then the budget. And it tells you it's a variance between per dollars and percent collected / used is August versus budget. It starts with revenue first, so it's got solid waste. Actual for August of 23 is $1.2 million. The transfers are part of that. We'll talk about the transfers a little more later. Landfill revenue collected was $459,599.91 for the first 2 months of the fiscal year. Tells you all of the different charges that we charge for. On the second page, it finishes the transfers that happen, and then we start into the expense for all of the years. The first set of expenses, the whole expense is that blue line. So that's the expenses for solid waste and the landfill. It's broken out by all of the payroll line items, the travel and training, the repair and maintenance, insurance costs. You can see all of the actual numbers for those. On page 3 continues, it's detailed. So it's giving you every line item and what we spent for the last 2 years and then what has happened current fiscal year. Go all the way back to page 4. Landfill starts on page 4. The expenses for the landfill and the budget associated with it. It goes back with payroll and all of that all the way down. Then on page 5, it shows you the landfill fund for the landfill, the salaries again for the actual landfill. And that goes all the way. Ultimately, when you get to the back, and you all can spend more time looking at it, but the last page, I sort of did a summary. So on page 9 at the bottom, I tell you for solid waste, the summary, the revenue for August of 23 through August of 23 is $1,247,357. The expenditures were $845,000 for a total of $402,307.81. That their revenue is above their expenditures, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
The landfill is the other direction. It's $459,591.91 revenue and expenses of $1,103,494.46. So they're at a loss of $643,894.55. And those two together equal the consolidated net income above it of $241,586.74 as a net loss through August.
Right. Let me ask you this, Cheney, then. So the 23 budget, we are going to be in it, just according to budget, 2.5 million and then subtract 720, so $1.8 million shortfall between solid waste and landfill. Is that
Yes.
my math correct? So we're going to be upside down in landfill at $1.8 million.
Well, and then we can go back and talk about the transfers.
Right.
So the next page in your packet, I've actually pulled out the same information and we're just going to talk about what transfers happen. So for the solid waste is the first section and for the landfill is the second section. It's that one. That one. So for budget purposes, we were transferring 300,000 to cover the solid waste from the ARPA funding. We've actually done that. So the actual that we have transferred is 298,044.48, close to what budget was. Transfers out to the general fund. Budget is $1,148,095, and that's the indirect cost, which is the last sheet that you have in your packet. So from solid waste, we are taking $1,148,095 for the indirect cost allocation. Then we have the unemployment.
One quick question. Are we using those, how do you calculate what their portion is? Are we still just using a percentage that we've used from years past, or
Yes, because
we just
Yeah.
going with whatever those percentages are? When was that last updated to look at what those really indirect costs
Yeah.
are?
it's going to be.
It's not an exact science.
Well,
We all know that.
talking about where those percentages come from, and I'm
How
not
do you
sure.
come to the 1.1 million?
When the last time those percentages were changed, I'll have to go back and compare prior reports on that.
I'm just curious.
And we didn't change, so I wasn't here to do 22's budget, but we used the same percentages that was done in the
Right.
budget of 22 for 23.
I'm just curious whether sometimes you got to take a relook at what your methodology is and whether it's.
For 11% out of this group.
Right. And
Thank you, Jane.
the unemployment is for the portion of the unemployment, it's 16,350. There's 2 million coming out of solid waste for the Ascent project. And then there's a transfer of $1,258,834 that is between solid waste and landfill.
I just in and out between the.
Yeah. So I know the mayor, you and I had talked about a transfer of 4,123,000. That's that number. But $1 million of it, $1,258,834 is just between two funds that Abraham oversees. We haven't done any of that transfer yet because we won't actually do it until year end. And if the landfill ends up in a hole, then we'll transfer what's needed to bring that fund to a zero balance. It was just a guess and it was based on a 3-year average, because if you look at fiscal year 21, you can see what was transferred from solid waste to the landfill was almost $4 million. But for 22, we only transferred 460,000. So it's going to be how they end the year. So that one really doesn't count. It's just a transfer between his two funds.
It has no, when you look at them together, it has zero effect.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And then for landfill, the only transfer is that one coming in, and then the 16,350 for the unemployment on it. And the 300, so the 300,000 isn't normal. The only part in there that ultimately is the transfer for Abraham is the indirect costs of the $1,148,000 and then the $2 million for Ascent.
So that $1.8 million that we're going to be short would not be short if we weren't transferring out to Ascent. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
So the $2 million is really never there?
It's in the fund now, the $2 million.
It's not there?
Do what?
No, that the money, the fund, the 2 million is there in the fund balance. We're transferring that out, no?
We haven't transferred any of
Right,
it
right, we
yet.
haven't transferred out.
Right.
But I think, am I understanding you correctly, Counselor, that you're saying that the money's not there?
Because of operationally, he's going to be $1.8 million short this year.
May I ask a question, Counselor? How's the debt structured that we're paying? I see the principal. Is it just a standard loan? Is it, what type of loan is it?
Yeah,
Is it with the state?
NMFA.
I know.
Money is going, it's short. Operationally, but the solid waste and landfill is short by $1.8 million on the budget. And now you're taking another $2 million out of there. See where it's at.
It's either 3.8 or plus 200,000, depending on how you look.
Yeah. So thank goodness we got Uncle Louie's inheritance with the American Rescue Fund.
Well, that money's already gone. So, because we got 3 years, my calculation. That alone,
Could be.
we.
You're saying they don't have.
It's gonna make that whole thing.
Get the budget.
$2 million. Depending on how you calculate this, 4 million under, we got 7 million in American Rescue.
Cash is there.
$3 million potential.
Another 3 million where?
Yeah,
Yes.
TSA.
Cash is there.
at 6/30/22. I would
So
agree.
That's what I'm told.
6/30/22.
The money's gone.
Yeah, we're out front. The good news is we're ahead of our gross receipts calculation, but not the rate to cover all of our bets.
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
that's,
That's the big statement that you have.
Councilor Barry?
that's.
I'm sorry, keep talking. I'm still here.
Oh, could you hear that discussion that we were having here?
Yes, sir. There at the end, when there were 2 or 3 people talking at one time, that does become difficult to hear. But yes, sir, I was understanding.
The point of the conversation is that the American Rescue Fund's already obligated. Even though we haven't specifically said where it's going to be obligated, but depending on how you look at the Ascent thing for $2 million and the shortfall here of 1.8, you can zero those out and it gives you 200,000 plus.
Right.
And we've got this potential problem with TSA that we don't know what it really is. But the rumor says it's $2 million or $3 million bucks. Plus, I think we're going to be over 2 million short in the 70/30 plan. So the rescue fund is already spent and we've got other obligations, I fear, out there that we can't cover. Is that a fair statement, Janie?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at the airport and everything, yeah, for them, it's the 1.8.
Well,
You guys have 1.8 short. We're taking 2 million out from it. It wouldn't be short if we weren't taking 2 million out from them.
so that would.
And I agree with that.
And they'd be 200,000 to the
To
good.
the good.
And then you add the projected revenue on the 70/30 plan, it's going to be short, somewhere around 2 million bucks. And then the TSA thing, at 3 million bucks, you spend all that money. If the TSA thing gets resolved and it ends up costing us $3 million, that's been rumored. I can't say there's any, I haven't seen any facts and figures, but that's what that $7 million is out the door. And we've got other obligations out there that we're going to have to meet that I'm not fully aware of. Because, and the reason why I say that is I've been in this chair for not quite 120 days and I'm finding all of these promises that we're going to try to keep down the road. And I'm not sure I know all the promises yet. I'm kind of in a dark room trying to find the door to get out. You know? So that all a fair statement. You guys like to deal in columns. I like to look at the overall picture, and I'm going, we're in really tough shape.
Well, and at this point, like I said, we've not transferred any of the indirect costs. We've not transferred anything on Ascent, and we've not transferred anything on the landfill because they're not in a hole big enough that we need it yet.
Well, I got it, but eventually, we close the books this year, we got to make everything zero, right? And we'll be stealing from Peter
Whatever it
and
is.
Paul.
No, whatever it is.
And the other thing I was looking at, just quickly for my edification, because you accounting folks, you got it all figured out. On page 3 of your blue line sheets, I see a couple of things we've already used, 100% insurance, liability, and workman's comp. So those are one-time payment deals.
Well, yeah, and I don't know whether, also, I was going to get into there, Counselor, in respect to what you're saying there, is that you look, you're 23% of expenditures, and we're only 2 months in, we're only 12.5% in through the year, and we're 23% of budget used on the expenditure side on solid waste. And we get to landfill, and we're 32.85% of the total budget used.
Well, and insurance is one of those.
And so it makes, some of this may come back around, I guess, my.
Well, because we pay it all up front. So we paid all of the insurance. So all insurance is going to be 100%.
That's because we're a cash basis.
Well, because New Mexico self-insure bills us on July 1 for the premiums for the year, and that's what we
But if we
pay.
accrue, we do expense.
Right.
Well,
Comes in now, I get.
And it's kind of like, I'm looking
So I'm
here,
just hoping that comes back into line because we're 12.5%, we're 12.5% into the year, but we're 32% into the expenditures.
Right. And I think, what I do in my spare time is go through there, is go in there and look and make sure that it's the one-off items that are causing that, because you're getting up 100% spent. It's not going to take much to get it up to 32%.
Right, in a short period of time.
Right.
well, that's the same thing you run into with your computer subscription and license. I assume it's twice billed annually. I mean, and so we spent 50% of it. I don't have a problem with that. And the temporary workforce is at 99.83, and you've got another $45.30. I assume whatever project that was, it's done.
So on the temporary labor, usually
3 of 5 is the line I'm looking at. 65, 24, 24.
the temporary outside labor.
Yeah.
So we use that as a support staff to help us on the landfill, pick up the garbage, to kind of supplement the existing staff. Usually we come in with we usually have a significant amount of, not a significant amount, some money carried over. This year we came over with zero. We still had templates fiscal that went over. We tried to close those out. It was at a zero balance, so I had to move stuff from other line items to back that up to support it, to short up.
So that's an ongoing expense, correct?
Yeah, it's an ongoing expense. One of the individuals that we always bring on as a temp labor, he actually hired on with us permanent.
Okay.
So we were able to get him off those temp books. But
You're 1/12 into the fiscal year, and you've already spent 99% of that line item.
that's the money we had to transfer in.
Page 3 of 9.
Yeah, and that's it, solid waste.
A little bit above half.
10 lines out.
Yeah, it's 20, 65, 24, 24 on the left-hand.
Gotcha.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking at this and, I mean, none of these line items I see on here. I mean, I just got this a little while ago.
I didn't finish it until today.
Well, I understand, and I'll take it home and I'll think about it a little bit. But all of these line items, I don't see one that would be at the expected 12, 13. There's one. The mobile phones, it's $13.99. That's close to 12% of this year's budget, you know. I'm going through this. Here's one at 7.5 for phone allowance. It looks like me, or maybe, yeah, phone allowance that's under the line. And then I see some that's got zero, so we've got some pockets of money in there. Employee training, do you have some training scheduled for your guys?
You actually have guys going to get their Landfill certification, right?
Okay, so that's gonna go down.
What are you gonna have?
Council, I have one other question for our concerns. Your 41% of your contract demolition money is already spent.
Is that the
150,000, you've got 369,000 budget. That's on page 5.
Yeah. It's community enhancement.
That's not under me, it's under Kevin May.
Why is it going under here? This is your-
A number of years ago, and I found this out later, a number of years ago, they transferred there was 2/16 of that tax that had to be combined. And that's what they use on the community enhancement demolition.
Right.
So they use that money for the demos and stuff. So they don't demo every month though. So I think they, right after the first of the year, they had like 12 demos that done right away.
Okay,
And then they'll be sporadic throughout the year.
but is there revenue associated with that? Or not, it's all expense?
It's all, basically, it's all expense because we place liens on them. Very few of those liens get paid back.
So
Yeah.
solid waste landfill has to pay for it, even though you don't have control over that budget.
No.
Okay.
You know, but you know, in looking at all this stuff, and I don't know, but I'm sitting here looking and when I look over here on this little white sheet that you had, and you got to transfer 2 million for a cent. And if they're underwater, how can you transfer 2 million for a cent? Because it was my understanding that you had to have next year's payment plus 25%.
With a bond.
Yeah, so you got to have 125% before you can transfer any money out of any of these enterprise funds.
So, Mr. Mayor, that would be for an active bond. And there's a grant for this. The MFA grants do have conditions about spending as well. I'd have to look it up to give you more detail.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, all these departments have bonds. I mean, they got bonds somewhere. I mean, they're all active. And so, I mean, so for your bond payments, if you're in the hole or, to me, you're going to be in the hole if you take that 2 million out. You're not going to have money to pay 125% of your bond payments. So you can't transfer that money out, can you? I mean, am I right on your landfill? I don't know how you transfer water out if you're losing money in those departments.
Well, Chair, and if I may, Chair, councilors and mayor. So when we developed the preliminary budget was based on the projected numbers that we thought were going to end in June 30th. When we approved in July, the final budget, and it's all included in here, based on the estimates on revenues, expenditures, and the transfers, including all of the debt, that's where all of these numbers come in. Now, these are all just projected numbers that were approved in the final budget. In the course of the fiscal year, obviously things will happen. And now if circumstances change throughout the fiscal year, that's where finance will be looking at the numbers and saying, we may have to address that adjustment that's happening now and go back and revisit the final budget and make amendments to the budget. But the $2 million was based on the final, and it's all in there. It's just projected number. If things happen throughout the course of the year, we have time to adjust. That's why we bring budget adjustment resolutions to the council for making those adjustments. So if now, for example, if the landfill or any fund that we're transferring money out of, if any of those funds are unable to afford that transfer, we'll have to come back to you all and say, we may have to revisit that transfer that you all approved in the final budget. But all those numbers are coming from the final budget, man.
And, okay, and so can understand that as we go down the road. But my problem comes in if at any time we have to come back and adjust these funds. And later in the year, as the year goes along, and so we do it after we've gone through 9 months. The only place you can find any money is in labor. That's when you'll find most of your cost, most of your money. That means you're gonna have to lay people off to come to balance your budget.
Well, and Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chair and Mayor, of course, and that's where it becomes a policy decision of the council. Because there are obviously there's funds. We talked about the American Rescue Funds being there as well. That's why we opted for the lost revenue because it gives us more flexibility. So there's other ways that certain things obviously can be addressed, but that would be ultimately up to the governing body to make that determination, both with discussions with management and finance.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. So I think I understand what you're saying. Basically, you can adjust throughout the year and this payment out for the ascent doesn't necessarily go out till the end of the year. Correct. And you can adjust accordingly. Now, my concern is last February, I actually believe that the council committed to ascent to move forward. We've made a commitment. So it's actually very scary to just kind of going well, we have it, we may not have it. What do we, when you have that and they're building.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we kind of have to have it. You can't really adjust what you make a promise like that. So that's why I'm kind of going, I hear you, but we're in trouble.
Yeah. So let me ask a couple of questions on the 70-30, going back to that for a moment. So one of you guys or gals that are watching this on a daily basis, where is the museum on its collections? Are they at 12% of making the part they're supposed to make or not?
You'll find out in September when we see the financial.
What was last year, do you recall?
Last year was 7%.
7%, okay.
Zoo was 7%.
So, hopefully, I mean, we may see at minimum that 7%. Hopefully, there's an increase on that. That was part of the goal, is to try to see every year kind of start building towards the percentage that they were required to meet. But we understand the reality. Again, Mr. Mayor and councilors, I mean, you all have seen the GRT coming in, so that gives us at least a little bit of comfort. But again, that's something that we'll have to address.
GRT, in my opinion, is going to have to double, of course, to cover all of our bets, which is kind of the way I look at it. But hopefully I'm wrong. But the additional GRT that's coming in over what's budgeted to meet all of our obligations is going to have to double whatever it's over now.
Right now, we're on track to, if we stay on track, we'll be $6 million over budget on the revenue side.
I don't think that's going to cover all the bets, but anyway.
Well, it'll go a long way.
That's just my skeptical side. So, and I want to remind that everybody that the four of us sitting in this room, plus two others, put this sucker together. We balanced 22 and did a budget for 23 in less than 90 days. And now we're finding out all of these pitfalls that we didn't know about. I think that's absolutely the truth. Whole truth, but truth. You see what I told everybody.
Yeah.
Testified in front of me from the bench. So.
Mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm looking at, and we went and changed our fuel bill. Page 7. Landfill is already at 58% of the total budget. It's been $159,000 in fuel, and we only budgeted $270 for the year.
Even they got big storage tanks.
What we paying out from the collection side, and we pay from the all waste. For the map. I think that Pmfa just came out from the election side. It'll line up on both sides.
So,
So sometimes we'll do it one commission out of collections.
and so where is the number on, help me out,
It's on page 3.
page 3?
Yeah, and there's nothing expensed out of it.
So if I add those two together,
Oh.
page 3,
Yeah,
fuel,
6
got
up from. the bottom.
budgeted
7232000.
359, 359, 270, it's 630, 59 against the 630, correct? Pretty close. $159, 630. 25%, or 12.5% into the year.
Then,
We may be a little trouble.
we did,
Fuel prices are coming back down. So
yeah, that's a temporary deal. I think we're going to.
it's just another concern. So,
I'm sure we increased our, not only for these guys, but everybody enough. From a broken crystal ball. I just think that we're going to see another big spike in fuel prices.
it's just a concern. We're 16% in the year, 25% of expenses already. So, and that's, you're not going to stop. You can't sell those trucks to stop, can you? You don't have a hybrids over there. You don't have electrical places to go plug them in.
Negative. So we actually monitor their idling too. In the geotown.
Yeah.
When they're idling more than 5-10 minutes, we get alerts.
Yeah.
We give them a call. Hey, what are you doing?
Shut her down.
What's going on? Shut it down. In the morning, we can give them about 5 minutes of the most idling time.
Yeah. Oh, you're doing the right things, but I'm concerned about, that's out of your control.
Yeah.
And that could be if you project that on the end of the year, you're going to be over a couple $100,000 in fuel easy. If it continues.
As we're generating our preliminary budget in April, we actually asked for additional.
Yeah.
If it was available. So
Because we took your original budget forecast, we bumped the fuel 30%?
That's what I was looking for.
I think that's what we did.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think it bumped them from the original budget. So,
We did nothing.
it'd be interesting to see what the first one, fire, police.
Ash, how do you know your sanity?
Yeah.
I dreamed it.
Begin with that.
These guys are running on the
Last year's budget, this year's budget. It's only.
So they put miles on every day.
every day.
And you know, you don't
Just a
know.
voice of concern, that's all.
We increased it 33%.
That's what I thought. I haven't got a total or anything else. Getting close.
I only missed one digit,
One,
you know, it was a 3, but you.
to 30.
Okay. Janie, you got something else on these sheets? I'll go digest it until you know. Conversation.
No, the last sheet is the colored one that has the blue and green color on it. It is the indirect cost allocation. And you see the indirect cost, I've highlighted in blue all of the departments that make up the indirect cost. And then the ones in green make up the critical costs. The critical cost, the total salary or the total expense is allocated between all 3 enterprise funds evenly. And that's, so the bottom line down there, the total of first front page shows you what actually was budgeted for airport solid waste and water for indirect costs.
And this is allocated, these percentages are on, back me up on this, because you got the airport at 8.4, you got these guys at 11, you've got the water and sewer at 16, but who, Explain how those numbers are arrived at.
I don't know. We
Okay.
picked up the allocation from last year's budget and used the same allocation.
I want to run the airport. They don't have to pay so much. That sure won't have anything to do with the water and the sewer allocation.
And then at the very, very bottom on the back of it, it tells you what the current FY22 allocation was and then the proposed allocation for 23. And it went up $148,000 and the division between the three there.
Okay. So remind me what's considered critical and indirect.
Critical, municipal court, police, fire, animal control, emergency management, consolidated dispatch, and neighborhood watch.
And those don't allocate?
Pardon me?
Those do not allocate or they do allocate?
They are allocated and they're the critical cost that's highlighted green
Gotcha.
front page.
Do you add the indirects and directs and that's your total?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Okay, so what's contained in the indirect?
The blue ones, which is executive and legislative, administration, city clerk, finance, purchasing, human resources, facility maintenance, fleet maintenance, safety, code enforcement, public affairs, and IT.
Okay. Something all of them use, although I'm not sure that these guys use consolidated dispatch.
Code enforcement. What are you?
We partner.
They were poor problems, I suspect. Because these guys are out looking around all the time. I hope they're making those phone calls.
Yes.
That's what they're doing for you.
Yeah, we partner with them a lot.
Okay.
You know,
You're probably getting a bargain from them. 85,000.
you know, I'm still amazed when I go over there and look and I see what Abraham and Solid Waste can do and look up on how many stops his trucks make, how long they spend at each stop. And if anybody's sitting, I don't know, but that sure is, and you can track people on there where they're sitting. There's no room for anybody to sit down and read the newspaper in his truck. You know, that's.
Okay, well,
And that's all I have.
when I was a judge, I worked on a deal with police departments for them to have that ability, and there's a couple of different outfits. One of them was basically free from University of Alabama. We went with the expensive guys, which was dollars expensive when we got somebody that's doing it for nothing, but that's what they decided. So I lost that battle. I thought it was a more robust system, in my opinion, but that's okay. I got outvoted.
You know, let me know, you know, like, under the airport, we got it in here for just expenditures. You've got an airport and it's 4.6 million, but that doesn't have that. What do we have to come up with 400,000 to get a $200,000 grant, or is that 400,000 included in this 4.6 million? Isn't that right? Then we have to we were announced we got a grant for 200,000 on the airport on trying to get somebody from,
That was meet and hunt thing.
yeah, the meet and hunt and all that stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, is that 400,000, that's not figured into this, right? So I mean, we have to get 400,000 to get the $200,000 meet and hunt grant, which was, we were using to try to expand our air service.
Actually, it's a twofold deal. One, you got to keep them online to be able to communicate with American Airlines. And then number two is possibilities with United coming out of Denver.
That original contract was 66,000 if I recall.
But that's just part of it.
That's
I
just
don't know
part
what
of
the
it.
rest of that 60.
But ours was 66, but we got a grant from the state
Right.
It was announced for 200,000, but you got to spend 400,000 to get it. But I don't think the 400,000 is in our.
He's sitting out there with $1.2 million or $1.3 million grant. And he's able to utilize a portion of that grant to pay for that, is what I was told.
Yes. Pay for 400,000. Oh, that's good.
And isn't that what was discussed last week
Yeah.
Okay.
at the
And he
finance?
utilizes, we're also utilizing a portion of that grant to pay for some of the ILEA operating expenses as well.
Okay,
So it'll reduce.
so you had that meeting in legal, right?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we
But I
did.
missed,
Yeah.
But
I missed a meeting.
in ILEA though, we're still up 300,000 additional costs that we don't.
Yeah, it wasn't 300, but we'll get a portion of that back by utilizing. We can also cover the administrative cost out at the airport to help towards that ILEA. Is what I'm told. Is that what we understand it like? I think that's right. So I don't know what that number is, Mayor, but it's going to help. So I do have a question. I know that we did the scale house. Is that project completed?
It's actually not. We have a couple of, we got to wrap up. And then we just need to.
Budgeted anything for that?
So it was approved project for $200,000 from the council. But when the line item came in this time, it was, some of the funds are moved around. So I got to move money from different areas to finish up that stuff.
So wait a minute.
So you're saying that the full 200 didn't get to go to your?
I think we spent a total of $86,000 out of the 200,000, so it should have been about $110,000 left over. So when we pulled the line item this year, it wasn't there.
So that's the rest of that vote. So you were allocated
Did you get a
200,000.
carryover?
No,
What happened is as we transitioned from from the preliminary into the final, there were some projects that probably were not picked up, that should have been picked up. That's one of the, for example, when Lorenzo came before this meeting during the final budget, he asked for those projects that were about future appeals. Lewis did the same thing.
It should have been a carryover.
Yeah, it should have been in the carryover, but
It wasn't.
it wasn't. So, and since probably Abraham is covering that project with some of his existing funds, we may have to come back in January, to make sure we do a budget adjustment. But the project is continuing to move forward.
I think we're gonna need a couple meetings in January, so I like just try to balance 6 months of the books.
Well,
We just missed that as a carryover.
Yes.
and with that, because he has his own funds, the money would, instead of being listed in the project column, that it's listed in the beginning.
Right.
The beginning cash for it is,
It is in there?
yeah.
So
It just didn't get, the POs didn't get carried over, but because he has his own funds, it doesn't
It
go
is.
back into general fund. It stays in his cash balance.
So it is in there.
It's in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
This works, we ready to, is there some more questions?
Mr. Chair, just the only thing I would add is, again, realize that this one, again, I just want to repeat that the final budget was based on numbers from July 1st. Every quarter, finance is required to report to DFA on a quarterly basis, and we will present that first quarter report to the finance committee. During the course of the time, obviously, if there are some changes things that happen that we need to adjust, we'll come back to the committee and we'll let them know if there's any red flags.
Is that gonna be on the October agenda or is it gonna?
Probably the November, because they have to close
Right.
September at the end of September 30th.
That makes sense.
But I will probably hit you up for a budget adjustment in October for the,
We're gonna do all that in January.
well, for the convention center, because the fence was was approved for payment out of the bed fees. We didn't use any of that money, so there's no budget authority in the convention center bed fees. And it's going to throw us over budget on our DFA report, because most departments are covering until we get to January with their existing budget. There's no budget there to cover. So
That was a tie vote out of this committee, was it not?
I don't know, the full council said yes.
I know. Well,
Because it's coming out of the bed fee.
yeah. I changed my mind at the council. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway. No, it was gonna be a tie vote. I remember that. I was 6, so the mayor didn't have to worry about it.
Well, it's just gonna be a transfer out of the bed fee is all it's.
No.
Yeah, it'll be adding budget authority for her to do that. So we did, well, and we overrode the budget one time this year for that project.
Well. Okay. That's where we gotta go.
We're done.
Well, we got one more little thing I thought Nick went us about. I think we're done. Anything else on the landfill? Okay.
Anything else you got?
I want to give the landfill a moment to blow their own horn, so to speak, and see what he sees in the future. I think that's only fair. We need to see what he has in mind going forward.
Chair, if I may, with your support, some of the things that we're looking forward to is hopefully we can kind of streamline our operations, run a little bit leaner and meaner. We're going to hold the fence until January. Hopefully we can make some of those adjustments. We do want to look forward. We want to plan now for the next 5-6 years. Like I've told the council before, that planning has to happen now for the future. So having those, streamlining those processes that we do every day, our operations from top to bottom, is what's critical for us. It's new SOPs, it's more technology to leverage our efficiencies that help us in the future. So hopefully we can help you with some of that budget, but some of those inflation numbers, those budget numbers are kind of tough to get where we got. So we have a hell of a team out there. And these guys, all of them do a great job on my entire team. So kudos to them. Appreciate without them, we wouldn't be here. So holding that public utility together, it's a difficult job. We're holding it down with the support of executive management. So thank you for the opportunity.
There's a project that you're in the middle of. Well, I don't know where you are. In the transfer of the 300-gallon tubs in the alley to the 90-gallon individual home project. Where's that?
That's some of the stuff that we want to talk about with Joe and see how we want to kind of incorporate that. The benefit for me, from my side, is having my trucks running on concrete and asphalt. It's way better than navigating these alleys. Sometimes turning into these alleys is pretty tight. We got to kind of come out to the middle lane and hit a sharp right turn. These alleys they're rough. They're 4x4 and these alleys overgrowth. They're not built for the size trucks we have now. So getting out of that, bringing our service curbside would be a lot more efficient. However, I will say 90% of the city can probably go 90s residential side. 10% there's alleys that are just perfect for 300s. Those will be fine. But now I think doing a curbside will help out a lot of our equipment, cut down on knocking down fences, knocking down cables and wiring. It's going to be a cultural change for the city. But so as soon as executive management, we have that conversation, we're able to present something to you, we'd be glad to come to the table. That process, what we do is right now, there is certain alleys that we hit that we find some major flaws in it. We'll step in, we'll talk to the neighborhood, we'll talk to executive management, say, hey, look, I'm going to change this neighborhood, and this is why. I got to bring my justification. Then we go to the neighborhood, we go door to door, talk to the residents, let them know, hey, this is how it's going to work, this is what it's going to do. Jason Flores, he'll stay over about 2 months. He'll monitor the neighborhood for the next 2 months to make sure, hey, time to get your can out, let's help them, let's adjust them. Or he'll go in front of his crews and he'll help them bring their cans out. So we kind of educate them on how it works. And usually about 2 weeks, they'll develop a new habit and then we can move forward.
Well, I can tell you, it's happened in my neighborhood. I hated it at first, but I think it's a great thing now. Although I've got a broke lid, I don't know how it got broke, but anyway.
Because you forget to take it out there on the day. That's what the problem is.
Well, turns out that I don't develop that much refuge, and his guy doesn't have to pick mine up but about once a week.
I don't mind changing over because it'll stop people from using my tub.
There you go.
It does help with
Where am I going to dump my extra refuge?
Take it out to the Crummers because we get all that stuff out there. You don't believe that roll off what it gets.
Where are we going to put our mattresses?
Out at Crummers' place. That's what hell was.
Well, that's nice you to
After
volunteer.
time when he goes out there, that can't come out of a car dealership. The stuff's
you get the
I
spare?
do have a question for you. When we were doing our original budget conversation, I think back in April with you, there was a talk, or you had talked about some kind of software program that
Probably
you
the
could
argument,
utilize that would help the efficiencies on your routes.
the ArcGIS.
Yeah.
So the ArcGIS,
Where are you on that project?
we're at a point now where, in talking to our consultants, they're recommending a third-party software that already puts it all together. What they'll do is they'll build on our data, what we've already done. If you're doing a lot of the work up ahead of time, about 80% of the work we've already done. Now we need to graduate into a third-party software. For example, RouteShare, Rubicon. They specialize in getting our data, putting it into their trucks, and we'll be able to deliver that. So, but at that point, based on the budget, I had to put that on hold for now.
But that allows you to run a more efficient route, less wear and tear on vehicles, less gasoline consumption, less a lot of things.
Less callbacks too, because sometimes,
Right.
hey, you missed my can, hey, you missed my can.
So what is the cost for that?
So we got some preliminary costs right now. It's about $50,000.
50,000. What do you think the payoff would be in just
And
Oh.
fuel and
fuel
callbacks.
and wear and tear on vehicles?
I'd have to run the numbers for you, but we'll probably get a return on our investment within, I would say, a year.
You get it back in a year, and then we'll have continued payout on the price of fuel today. I don't know why we're not doing it. I mean,
I'll be
if I
glad
was sitting there making that decision, that's exactly where I'd go.
I'll be glad to have
If I can
that.
get an ROI or payback in less than 12 months and fuel, I don't know what, you're running diesel or you're not,
Yes, sir. All of our,
at $5 a gallon or whatever it is, you cut that down 10%. I don't know what it'll save you, but boy, I'd take a hard look at why that's not implemented.
So let me ask a question. You've got lots of acreage out there. This is a general question. Do we buy our fuel on the contract? Can we save some money by putting in a diesel tank out at the landfill for the landfill people? I mean, what do? We just buy, whenever we need it, we go buy and fuel up at a.
I'm going to make the assumption, and we're buying the fuel in bulk. We do have 2 tanks out there right now. The tanks that we have now, they've been there for about 15 years. They're way too small for what we need. So that tank's getting refilled up every 2-3 days. Because the compactor alone will take 126 gallons by itself. Compactor, that thing runs 7 days a week. 6 days a week, I'm sorry. So if we, there is,
How big are your storage facilities up there?
I want to say it's a 3,000 gallon tank.
No, it's not that big. It's only,
2,500.
yeah.
7,500, you got 2 of those?
No, we have 2,500. The other one is the gasoline, but we don't really use gas for much.
Right.
Just our,
You need a minimum of 10,000 gallon tank.
Yeah.
and also we
Plus
can,
you need a
Transport
facility,
8,000 gallons, give
a
or take.
facility to load it quickly. I mean, these guys can't.
ideally, if we did have that conversation, we did do that. We could move that fuel island somewhere else that's a little bit more easy to get in and get out. So we can service trucks on both sides. A little bit safer too, and then modernize those tanks. Those tanks are old. They're double line tanks. Are they
fulfill today's requirements by whatever regulatory agencies?
yes, they pass everything right now. But it'd be good to modernize them, but it's a cost.
Okay.
Your pump's gonna have to have a lot bigger pumps. If you do 100 gallons a truck, I mean, of course, they probably don't do it every day.
What we do is we fill up the trucks at the end of the day. That way in the morning, it reduces their pre-trips and reduces their idling. So they come in, do their pre-trip, and they're out the gate. We try to get them out the gate within 10 minutes of the start time so they can hit the neighborhoods right at 5:45, actually 5:50, 6 a.m. is when they hit the neighborhoods. Ordinance kicks in at 6 a.m. So you want to stay within that little time window. So we do refuel every day. We refuel out there, then we also refuel in the city, depending on their time.
I mean, it's if we go to those 90 gallon cans all over town, there's 2 things are gonna happen. Number one, are there gonna be, how many problems are we gonna have with the streets? Because that truck's gonna have to go down the street one way and go down the street the other way.
You have to go in and come back out.
No, but some of those places, it's gonna be pretty hard to turn those trucks around if there's cars on both sides of the street.
Usually, sometimes when we run the streets, I've ran them with the guys before. During the workday, the streets are not so packed. Early in the morning, they would be, but between 7 to 10 a.m., 12, our streets are pretty empty. Everybody starts coming home about between 3, 4, 5. That's when they're home. And they leave home by 7, 8 a.m. So there would be some tight areas, but with the routing system that we have at Rubicon, we'll be able to identify those neighborhoods and adjust the route so we can hit those neighborhoods. It's a pretty intricate program. Santa Fe is actually using that system right now.
But you'll continue this time with the cans, dumping twice a week.
Yes, everything will stay the same. Maybe twice a week. Sometimes, when you control your waste stream, the 96 gallon, you're not going to start throwing everything in that can. You're going to monitor it a bit. So I think Councilor Carr's probably already seen that. You know what to throw in there, and then if you got to throw a lot more stuff, bring it to the landfill or set up a gravel service.
I just wonder how much more trash you're gonna get with people, since you're not driving down the alleys or all these places that have an alley.
So we ran some analysis with the RGIS system. We noticed that the alleys that do not have 300s are seeing less illegal dumping in the alleys versus the ones that are in the front. So if there's a 300 there, I'm going to go drive through there and everybody's going to drive through there. People are creatures of habit. I know where to go to dump my stuff. Nobody sees me. So they'll drive by at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, toss it and run out. Now, when you go down there, hey, I don't have 300s. Who's back there? What's going on? There'll be a phone call. Hey, somebody's back here trying to dump my alley doing I don't know what. We actually saw a reduction in illegal dumping. That's what the data's showing us now.
Okay. Anything else for Abraham? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. That was a little rough. Thanks.
Okay, now, what does you and I mentioned, doing something on the American Rescue Plan because Councilor Arnold was interested in that. Did you bring anything with you for that? I know it didn't make the agenda, but there we go. There it is.
She's a step ahead of you.
Okay.
Here's your.
Thank you, Becky.
I didn't know if we were going to talk about this or not, so I didn't test it out.
Well, I didn't. I've tried not to. Sometimes I do. Ed kicks me under the table. Got an extra one? No, hang over here. Mike needs one.
Who else needs one?
You keep that. You keep that.
I've got plenty.
Anybody else need one?
This is an informational meeting anyway, so I'm going to discretion of the chair and we're going to talk about American Rescue Plan. Talk to us, whoever's in charge. You handed it out, but are you in charge?
Oh, I think.
Thank you, Abraham.
Thank you.
Staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I updated this with the last approval for the air scrubbers for the library. So we received 11,751,501. The payment actually came in last week, so we've got all of the money that we're going to get for that. For lost revenue, we took $10 million. And that's what was reported to the federal government. So it left us $1,751,501 for qualified categories. We used lost revenue to cover the committal shelter and the columbarium at the cemetery, $849,537. We used lost revenue to cover the 4 items at the zoo for $720,000. We used lost revenue to cover the water deficit for fiscal year in 2022 for $1,300,000 for qualified categories. And there's numerous ones, and I believe Joe sent all of that out in an email. I do have a copy here if somebody wants to see it. Utility assistance was a big one, and we used we budgeted $1.5 million for it. We actually used $1,292,551.73 as what has posted to each one of those departments. The air scrubbers were $203,950. So in lost revenue, we have $7,130,463 left. And then ARPA, the qualified categories, we have $254,999.27 left. The timeframe for those is funds must be used for costs incurred on or after March of 21. Further funds may be obligated by December 31st of 24 and expended by December 31st of 26. So we can actually hold that other $254,000 up until December 31st of 2024. And then they all have to be expended by December 31st of 2026. The lost revenue is strictly that. It's lost revenue, so it's been reported and we can use it for anything we want to use it for.
Yeah, and there's no accounting on it.
Yeah, no.
Once you got it, there's no time limit or anything on it.
Right.
Because we've already accepted it.
Right, it's lost revenue.
Yeah.
Right. Did you have any other questions or?
No, I kind of had a good grasp on this. I think a lot of the thing I've been trying to explain is I'm not so much worried about where the money has gone. I'm worried about where it's going. And that's the kind of conversation I want to be having with everybody, is a projected concept of, okay, we have this, what do we do with it? But of course, after a lot of the conversations we've been having, to me, at this point, any utopic idea of a savings account doesn't exist because we're going to have to spend it. We're going to have to use it to cover our shortfalls. So that's why the whole thing I'd been talking about was really just trying to find something responsible to do with the money, something that would help us in the future, just having that conversation, whether it happened or not. But anyway, it really, at this point, it doesn't matter because we're going to have to pay Peter who robbed Paul.
And like I said, the $254,999.27 has to be used on a qualified project, and there's numerous things in the handout that would qualify. I wasn't there, but I watched the last city council, and there was a question, and I believe, Ed, you asked it, if there was any more requests out there.
Right.
The only other request that we've received for money was from Juanita for the visitor center. And I think it's about $212,000 on the visitor center to expand. I actually think I have a note in here.
Is it a qualified or?
It would qualify because right now the visitor center, when they have tourists come through town, she only has, it's only big enough to house 8 people in there at a time. So they take 8 in, they let them do their thing, they send them out, they bring the next 8 in. And it's difficult to do when there's 60 people on that bus that has stopped to buy stuff. The bathroom, one of the bathrooms over there is being used for storage, and it's, ultimately would meet the criteria for social distancing.
Well, I could remember when I was on the county and the city talked us into doing the shop on the Fisk building right over here on 4th Street.
Remember that?
And their focus at that point was to have public restrooms. And since then, the city sold the property and we still don't have any public restrooms. So the visitor center might be the place we need to put some public restrooms. Just a thought.
Yeah, and they've got one over there that you can use, but it would just be nice to have 2. And
I think it needs to be accessible from the outside. possibly in after hours. That increases the tourist service because people
What do
do
you call
silly
it?
things.
What do you call after hours? Place for a homeless shelter? That's,
Well, yeah, we'll end up with a tent city over here in our parking lot if we're not careful. I got that. Just food for thought. I'm not advocating anything at this point.
Everybody tells you we get more and more people that are here, but I haven't found anybody that can show me that somebody really bought a busload of people in here. Somebody admitted that they were a busload of people.
Well,
I'm trying there. I'm trying to figure it out because every morning, we had a new one in City Hall this morning we've never seen before.
yeah.
Looking for FBI badge. Every morning I come in at 7, I go up, check parks, look at different things, and I see new people every single day in the plaza at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know where they're coming from. Tried to get some information from the one I met today and wasn't able to get any information. I don't know where they're coming from, but they are.
Your wife's gone again. She's back working again for her family. So maybe you could go undercover.
Role play?
Yeah, we talk about this, but this is a problem.
It's
It's a serious problem. It needs to be, but it's not just our problem.
It's everywhere.
This is a county, state, federal issue. And unfortunately, the financial burden gets put on cities to deal with.
Yeah.
When it's really not just our problem. I think that's something that we got to look at is how we address our problem, but the state needs to step up and the county needs to step up.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, so.
You can't address
Get up to Santa Fe and get us a big check and we'll figure out how to spend it on homeless.
I actually spoke with Hess this afternoon at 1 o'clock. He came to my office and I was setting up a meeting because I am very concerned about it. On the public safety side, coming into the winter time,
Yeah.
I know what we had here in Goliath. We opened up our adult center because it wasn't Goliath a couple of years ago because we had a shrink. One of the churches manned it for us and they basically destroyed that building. And there was only like 6 or 8 people in there, the bathrooms. I mean, we had to go in and it was a mess. So I'm concerned with this many that I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
Come January, if we did another Goliath or a sub-zero temperature for a week, I'm concerned we could be picking up bodies. I'm going to set up a meeting with myself, yes, Chair of Public Safety. I was going to invite Councilor Arnold, so she can be a part of it. For next week to kind of discuss this, the police chief, the fire chief, and have the initial discussion on this is go back going forward.
And it's, I know it sounds hard, but you have the same, you've got a lot of the same problems that we're going to have at the animal shelters. That whatever you have, that over there, when you have a place to congregate all those people, and if it's not manned, and when you man it, you're gonna have to be more than one, or you can't just put 1 or 2 people in. And for their own safety as well, because a lot of people have significant issues. But you're almost not gonna be able to clean it. It's gonna be very difficult to clean where you can just hose it out. And because of the moisture content that you have in there is prone to cause a lot of other problems. And it's very similar to the animal shelter about when you go in there and the humidity's in there where they washed out things with a trough. It's, and the heating and cooling is all really presents some real, really tough challenges to get the moisture out of the air.
No, in my head now.
Okay.
And then where to put them.
I guess we need to go to the public, see if they have any words of wisdom. You always allow public.
Oh, Jason, are you still there? How are you doing, Jason?
I'm listening.
Oh, you have anything else, Jason?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have anything they wish to discuss? More trucks, more fuel. Okay, I think we covered that. Anybody? We got caller number 2 that's unmuted and caller number 3, whoever those are. And caller number 4, you got anything you wish to discuss? So Neb, you're on the deal and you're sitting right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, giving the public an opportunity. Mr. Manager, you got words of wisdom before we break up?
Councilors, thank you for walking through all of this. I know it's good to actually revisit everything and walk through exactly where to go. I think as you look at the 90s to the 300s and everything, know that we have to do a big educational campaign if we're going to make those adjustments. So I just recommend that we put as much information out there for that.
Well, I don't disagree. I hated it when it started. I love it now, but that's just one guy. Well, see, there you go.
I didn't like it when it started. I
Still don't like it.
Nope, that's like we're telling me to
You have
move.
to work and go, oh, nice trash day. You have to turn around and go back or back up. You
Well-
see all the neighborhood got theirs pushed out except yours didn't.
No, they all follow me because they know I work here, so. First out.
You. All right, thank you all. It's for adjourned. Our next scheduled meeting is. Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.